Welcome, everybody, to Conversations at Carrie's Corner. I'm Carrie. How are you doing today on this Friday as we head into the weekend? And we are almost at Labor Day. Can you believe that? In less than 2 full weeks, summer's done. That's insane. It just seems like yesterday was Memorial Day. You feel that way too? It just seems the time flies anymore. There's no time to even really stop and catch your breath. But let's get into today's podcast. So what is Conversations at Carrie's Corner to begin with before we get started today? It's a place to talk about issues, problems, challenges, concerns, all these things that affect daily life for all of us. Most things right now, for everyone it seems, are challenging. Doesn't matter where you live or what country you're in. There's similar problems in society everywhere, right? There's struggles financially, with families, with governments. You know, we've got wars going on. We've got people struggling financially. There's always, issues in families. Life is just a challenge. Let's be real, it's a challenge. And what we have seemed to lost in our societies, not just here in the United States where I am, but I see it in my families in Australia, my other extended family, which is in Australia, which is where I am from. And I think it's worldwide because of this amazing technology that we have, the cell phone and the computer and the iPhone, the watches and the laptops and the tablets and all of these things where we can communicate with each other, but we don't have to sit and talk to each other in a room. And I think the lack of that is really affecting so many societies in the world. So during the last U.S. election, it really struck me how here in the United States we had stopped the ability to talk to each other. Can't even talk to each other civilly anymore, it seems. We all don't have to agree. Let's face it, if we all agreed, life would be extremely dull. But we've lost this ability to talk about our problems and come up with solutions because we don't sit together at a table, it seems, and talk these things out. And so I thought, well, maybe a podcast is the way to encourage people through talking about specific issues where I share it with my circle of influence and then you share it with your circle of influence. Hopefully you'll see it and enjoy it, and hopefully it strikes a chord with you, and then you share it with your people, and then we get it out there into the vast expanse and get people talking about it. Because when we talk about things, that's when the thought processes and the willingness to talk about things calmly, intellectually, respecting each other's opinions, that's where it all changes. That's where challenges can be met, addressed, and hopefully change by talking about it and be willing to listen to somebody else's opinion. So that's kind of how it got started, because the last election, I was just stunned at this massive divide that we see in the United States of America today. And it's pretty bad. But it's not just here. You see it maybe not quite as bad in some other places in the world, but you do see it. So I wanted to talk today about, this is a very specific subject to the United States. So it may not apply, but it could apply to other places. I don't know how this works in other places, but here in the United States, it's a really big problem, and it affects people financially. It affects them on a stress level. It can affect a lot of things. It can have a huge financial effect on the people involved in it. And that's something that we all have to have in the United States. It's our second biggest expense behind mortgages, and that's insurance. Yeah, that dreaded word, insurance. And I know this subject really well. I've been an agent and an agency owner. I've been in the business, in the industry for 43 years, and I've had my own business since 2010 is when I left the corporate world and opened my own agency and became an entrepreneur. So in the 43 some years that I've been in this business, I have seen it all. I thought, until the last 2 or 3 years, frankly. The industry has drastically changed. I mean, drastically. From when I first started in this industry, you could use your insurance policy for pretty much anything you needed to around your house, right? You could turn in a claim. Your AC unit went out. You could turn in a claim. You got struck. The house got struck by lightning and blew the fuses. You could turn in a claim. You had a small fire in the kitchen. You turn in a claim. You had a water leak behind a wall. You could turn in a claim. You had a major storm come through. You turn in a claim, and you would get taken care of by your insurance company, right? What happened? It's not that way anymore. I can categorically tell you, as an independent agent now for 12 years, that time period in the world has gone away. You turn claims in for any reason, and your insurance company is going to raise your rate. I don't care what it is. Whether it's a car claim, if it's a windshield claim, a towing claim, if you get struck by hail, if you have a tornado come through and take the top of your house off and your roof off, whether you have a water leak behind your kitchen sink and it floods your kitchen and you're downstairs and your beautiful wooden floor, you can turn them all in. Are you going to get coverage? That's the $1 million question. And is it going to affect your rate? And I can categorically say yes to that without a doubt. We used to be at a place in the industry where every little thing didn't add up. Yeah, well, now it does. Every little thing adds up. So here's a great example. On an auto policy, for example. If you are the unlucky person who is in the springtime and you are in storms 3 years in a row, right? You go through these major hailstorms and they ding your car and they break your windshield, and you got to get them replaced. So you get them replaced. And then after that, you're realizing, golly, every time my insurance renews, I'm looking at a $400 and $500 and $600 rate increase. Yeah, that's what they do. So you're then at a point where you got to go and you got to shop around. You can't continue to take these kinds of rates. And then when you get into it and you work with an independent agent like me, or you work with a captive agent, and we come back to you and say, well, the problem is you have got 3 claims on your record in the last 5 years. And so we're struggling to find any competitive rates. See, now this, I'm not even talking about an at-fault accident here. I'm talking about weather. And we all come to the assume, well, we don't get surcharged for weather. Really? That's a very misleading statement. You do. So what do we do about all of this? That is another really good question. Here in Texas, we have gone from the bottom 5 most, let me rephrase that. When I started in this industry, insurance in Texas was one of the cheapest states in the United States. You could get loaded up with your insurance policies when I started, which was back in the 90s, early 90s, maybe late 80s. So you could load up your policies, take really low deductibles, and it was reasonable. I mean, reasonable. It might cost you $25 a car per month. Reasonable. Today, here in Texas, for an average vehicle, you're going to be spending $200 to $250 a month for a good driving record. And you're saying, no, you can't be, this cannot be true. Well, it is. Now, if you have accidents on your record, or you're driving around a brand new vehicle, or you have teenage kids in the household, or you have a bad driving record, you could be well over $300 to $400 a month for one car. That is a drastic change in 3 decades. I mean, so we have gone here in Texas from the bottom 3 to now we are the 3rd most expensive state behind Florida and New York. We're actually more expensive than California. Because California's threat, if you will, the peril, what they're most concerned about is earthquake. Here in Texas, we have tornadoes, hurricane, hailstorms, high winds, all of these things, and we're close to the Gulf of Mexico. So we have all of these perils. And so we are now the 3rd most expensive state behind New York and Florida. And the reason that they are still so high is because of weather as well. Florida is the most expensive state, then New York, and now Texas. That's crazy. That is really crazy. The average house here in Texas, in this state, and let's just use an average size home, it's going to have an average size replacement cost. So we're going to go with about $400,000. That's kind of the average here. Could be closer to $450,000, but we're going to stick with $400,000. That's going to run you $35,000 to $4,000 a year, guaranteed, with at least a 2% deductible. So it's 2% of what you insure the house for, which we're going to insure it for $400,000. So 2% of that is $8,000. That's your deductible, if you're lucky, and if you can get the 2%. Because that's phasing out here in Texas. It's now going to 3%, 4%, or 5%. If you're in the Gulf Coast area, you will not find a homeowner's policy for under 3%, if you're lucky. More likely, you're going to have to pay 4% or 5%, or you're not going to even find it unless you write a homeowner's policy that excludes wind and hail. And then you have to go get that from the state. Because if you have a mortgage, you have to insure your home. And if you don't do it and the mortgage company does it, it's going to be 3 times what you could buy it. So we're in this drastic increase. And then what happens? COVID comes along. And it did affect rates. Yeah, it sure did. After that, we've had a hurricane. We've also had a major flooding episode. So all of these things go into this massive calculation of what insurance is going to cost you. And in the last 3 years, the average person here in Texas sees a $4,000 to $5,000 per year rate increase. That's crazy, but that's where we are. So what is happening on top of that is we have carriers that have been here for a really long time. They're leaving the state of Texas. They can't be competitive. They can't make enough money, which I'm very cynical about this because I've been in this industry for so long. I don't actually believe that. I believe that they're just not making enough money. So until they go and restructure and get their rates back to where they want it to be and have the state of Texas approve those rates, they've gone. Now, they will come back eventually. I can think of one carrier off the top of my head that's been gone now for 6 years. And they write a ton of auto insurance, but they're just not writing any home insurance right now. So if you go with their auto plan and you want to bundle your auto and your home, you can't because they don't have a product now. So we've seen a drastic exodus of carriers here in the state of Texas since 2022. So that was literally 2 years after COVID. And it has just been this massive, massive, massive rate increase. Carriers have left, so there's not as many, so the price goes up even more. Here in Texas, the oldest, most conservative insurance company by far, it's been here longer than anybody else, has a stable base. They closed their doors for any new business for almost 2 years because they couldn't get their rates to stable, and so their losses were becoming more than that they were taking in, like any math calculation. And so they said, okay, well, we're just not going to accept any new business. So if you happen to have a home with them and then you sold that home and bought a new home, you were out of luck. They weren't going to give you any insurance. So then you had to go somewhere else and find it. Now that they have since reopened, but just this year, and things are leveling off with the new administration, but not nearly as fast as I personally thought they would level off. I thought by the time we were approaching Labor Day that we would see things, maybe not completely level out, but start to drop back down. And I'm not seeing that. What I am seeing, however, as a positive sign is we are seeing some new carriers come into the state where they've asked the state for approval and the state has said yes. And so now they are looking for agents to represent them. And I would say there's probably 10 to 12 of those. So that is a good sign. That's the first good sign we have seen since 2022. So more carriers are coming back, which means we have more options, which means the rates are going to get more competitive because there's more for you and I to choose from. That's how economics works. When there's more of us and it drives competitiveness, then it drives the prices down. And so I hope we see by the end of this year at least another 10 to 12 carriers come in. And hopefully when that happens, that's going to trigger the rate decrease. If we could see by the end of this year $1,000 deduction across the board for everybody's household insurance, auto and home is what I'm talking about, not everything else, not all the other toys or life insurance or anything like that, just the two big ones, auto and home. If we could see $1,000 rate decrease per household, I think next year we have a very, very good chance of seeing a really good reduction in rates because hopefully by then the Fed's going to lower rates, which means more people can buy houses, which means more insurance needs to be bought, which is again the same thing. More demand lowers the price. So, it's one of those things where more carriers at lowers the price is what I meant. So we hope that happens. The economy seems to be leveling out, and we've got to hope that continues too, because that all feeds into this funnel, which drives what our insurance does here. The one thing I would absolutely tell you is if you take higher deductibles, if you can afford to cover, let's say, $1,000 deductible on your auto, that's going to lower your premium, okay, which is going to keep your money in your pocket and not in the insurance company's pocket. Because when you take a higher deductible, it lowers your premium. So when I talk to my clients, I say this, look, take a higher deductible, take what the difference is between the premiums, and open up a household insurance repair fund or set it aside. Do something so you know that money that was earmarked is earmarked directly for repairs to your house. And take a higher deductible on your home too, because then you're insuring those things and you're not turning them into the insurance company, which is going to keep your rates lower because you're not turning in a bunch of claims. That's going to help you. When you're turning a lot of claims, the insurance companies don't like it. That's called frequency. And that's a big trigger. If you have, let's say you have 2 homeowners claims in the last 5 years and you have 2 auto claims in the last 5 years, it's going to be really hard for your agent to find you a really competitive price because there's 4 claims on 2 products in 5 years and the carriers don't like that. They're going to rate you for that. And then there's another deductible I really want you guys to understand if you live here in Texas. I don't know if this applies to other states, but here in Texas, it does. And if you're not in Texas, you should really ask your agent about this. So we have this big discount called a 5-year claims-free discount. Okay? I didn't say accident. I said claims-free discount. So if you have no claims whatsoever, okay, if your insurance is bundled, really if it's not bundled, if on your records you have 0 claims for 5 years, you can get up to a 25% deductible difference on your premium discount depending on the carrier. Okay, so no claims whatsoever on auto and home. 2 separate policies, so this applies to both of those policies. The average here in the state of Texas for a 5-year clean claims record is a 25% discount. That's a huge discount. If it's $100, 25% of that is, instead of paying $100, you're going to pay $75. So it's $25 for every 100. That's a lot of money. So this feeds back into the idea that you should be self-insuring small claims, holding the big claims when you have a catastrophe. Obviously, if you have a hurricane come through the city of Houston and it takes your roof off, you got to turn the claim in. But what's happening is we're finding out that carriers are not covering things. They are finding ways to get out of paying claims. Wear and tear. Saying you didn't do your due diligence. I just had a client here who we had a major storm. He had a tree hit his roof. Water came flooding in his roof, down in his walls, into his bedroom. It was on a Sunday night at 5:30. So he immediately called friends and family. They came over, they boarded the house, and did what he needed to do to start the repairs because he had water coming in his house. He had to do it to prevent any further damage. So he did it, and 2 days later, he called me. I gave him the information to call his carrier, turn the claim in. And when it was all said and done, they denied the claim. And the reason they denied the claim is because he started the repairs before he contacted the insurance company and got approval. Now, in my mind, that is absolutely wrong, and that carrier should be held accountable for it. Because as a homeowner, you've got to do whatever you've got to do to protect your property. It's called due diligence, and that's exactly what he did. He knew that he had to get the roof fixed or get a cover on it. He did his due diligence, and he still didn't get his insurance company to pay this claim because of a technicality, the way the policy was written. Now, this is happening everywhere. Here in Texas, there are several major class action lawsuits against the insurance companies for these exact things, where they are trying very, very diligently to not pay claims. During the last hurricane a year ago, there are over 45,000 homes here in the Houston area that had damage from that hurricane, and the carriers did not cover them. They would say, oh, well, there was wear and tear. Oh, well, you had a wheelbarrow at the back of your garage, and the wheelbarrow was picked up from the hurricane and put into your home, and so we're not going to cover your claim. These things are really happening. This is real world that's going on. So it is so important for you as a consumer to be involved. You need to get with your agent. You need to understand your policy. You need to understand what your deductibles are. You need to understand how you're rated on your auto policy. And you need to understand what all the coverages are, what they mean, and do you need them? Not everybody needs everything. Not everybody needs really high limits. A lot of people do, but not everybody. And unfortunately, like in any industry, there are disreputable people in the industry that sell just to sell, and they don't sell to provide you what you need. They're just selling, and the product happens to be insurance. They're not doing their due diligence to write your insurance based on what you need, not what your neighbor on this side or your neighbor on that side needs, but what you need. And it's unfortunately, there's always bad apples in every industry, and there are in the insurance industry. They just write to write. They don't care what they write. They try to write the highest premium because then they get more money. They get more commission. Now, that's not okay, and that never happens in my agency because I want my clients to be covered adequately, correctly. If you don't need it, don't buy it. If you have really great benefits at work, then you don't need all the bells and whistles on your auto policy. If you've got a 10-year-old vehicle, do you really need comp and collision on it? Because you're not going to get any money for it, depending on the vehicle. There's just a lot that goes into insurance, and you really need to work with somebody that understands the industry, understands the state of the industry, and knows what you need. So the insurance can be written based upon you and nobody else. It's so important, and I see it all the time when I get people that are looking for quotes and they send me their insurance, and I'm like, what on? People are spending hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars for coverages that don't even apply to them because they don't know. And that's despicable. But it happens, and I'm here to tell you, you need to be aware of it. You need to work with a reputable, experienced insurance agent that can tell you what you need after doing an evaluation of your property, your autos, and your financial situation. This is a financial decision, because making the wrong financial decision on an insurance product could bankrupt you. No joke. So you need to be working with an experienced, licensed agent, and then get a referral. Get a referral. If you go to a doctor, you want a referral. Well, you should do the same thing for insurance agents, because there are a lot that don't know what the hell they are doing. I'm just going to be real honest with you. So get a referral. So is it improving? Yes. Is it improving quickly enough? No. I'm a consumer too. I was really hoping by now we would see drastic improvements, but we're just not quite there. Hopefully towards the end of the year, we will see this. So I hope you take this specific topic today in our podcast and share it with your circle of influence. You may know somebody that's struggling, right? They may catch something in this video that will help them, or at least give them the tools to ask their agent what they need to do. And that's the goal behind this particular podcast today, is giving you little bits of factual information that you can think about and then move forward with it to get the actual answers that apply for you. As always, I'm here to help. So you can certainly reach out to me and I can direct you in the right direction. But you really do need to talk to your individual agent, because they're going to know your policy and I am not. Now, I'm in Texas, Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, and Oklahoma. So if you're in one of those states and you just need a little bit of advice, or you need to be put in the right direction, I'm happy to help with that. So that's all part of this podcast, is helping you to know what to ask and what direction to go in. So please share it with your circle of influence, because that's how we make change happen here in this country. If we're informed and we can talk about things, that's where we start to really affect what is going on in our communities, in our cities, our states, and nationwide and worldwide. When we learn to talk to each other and listen, that's when we can truly affect positive change and get this massive divide in our world today smaller. These things that we talk on, these phones and these electronic things, they're very powerful, but they've taken away our ability to communicate face to face, in person. So we got to fix that. The way we do that is by reaching out like I'm doing, and then hopefully you will be doing the same thing with your circle of influence. And I hope you have a great day. I do want to leave you with just one picture so you kind of get an idea of what Carrie's Corner is and what Conversations at Carrie's Corner is. I came to the United States in the late 60s. My family migrated here from Australia for my dad's career. And as I was growing up, my dad would travel ahead of my mom and my two brothers and I, and we would travel by car to wherever he was working for, that particular week, if it was close enough that we could drive to it. And I'll never forget, we would go into these amazing diners. A lot of this was in the South because at the time we lived first in Miami, and then we moved to the Houston area. So a lot of this transpired in Texas and along the Gulf Coast and in the South. And we would stop at these small towns, and inevitably there'd be a diner. We'd go in and sit down, and if my mom was by herself, or if my dad happened to be with us, it constantly amazed me how she could just sit down at this long bar in these beautiful diners and not know the person she was talking to, and then within 35 to 40 minutes they're having this grand old conversation, and some of those people ended up being her lifelong friends. So these diners are a place of conversations, and I hope you remember that when you see Conversations at Carrie's Corner. I want you to feel comfortable to sit down, grab a cup of coffee, sit down at the table or at the bar, and let's talk about all the things that are in our world that are challenges, that are hard, that we need help with, or that we just need to talk to each other about, because that's where we can truly affect change. And that's how we can make our lives a little easier. Thanks for joining me today on this Friday. The fall is almost here. I try to do 2 of these a week, so check back with me. Again, I'm on all platforms of social media. The podcasts are under Conversations at Carrie's Corner. And we'll see you the next time. This is Carrie. Have a splendid day. Please share this, like and subscribe, and send me comments. I want to hear from you. If there's a topic that is of interest or if you're challenging, send it to me and we will get it in our rotation for podcasts, because that's what I want to do too. I want to hear from you. What's happening in your world? Because if it's happening in your world, it's probably happening in everybody else's world too, or at least a good majority of them. So we'll see you the next time. Many blessings, and God bless this amazing country. This is Carrie. Take care.